She sings, she dances, she protects, she kills. M3GAN, the latest upgrade in a fear as old as humanity itself. We create them in our image. Dolls, playthings, companions. But what happens when the lines blur? When the inanimate seems animate? From ancient rituals and whispered folklore, to the magic of witchcraft and the chilling icons of horror cinema, the haunted doll endures. Join us on a journey through history, myth, and movies, tracing the unsettling evolution of the doll that won't stay put. The story of the animate doll, the one that steps from the toy chest into our nightmares, begins not with fear, but with creation. The urge to replicate the human form is ancient, perhaps innate. Long before recorded history, hands shaped clay and carved stone into figures that echoed their own bodies. The 40,000-year-old Lion Man of Hohenstein-Stadel, a hybrid figure found deep within a German cave, hints at early symbolic thought, a blurring of human and animal, the mundane and the mystical. More familiar are the Venus figurines, like the voluptuous Venus of Willendorf, scattered across Paleolithic Europe. Were they fertility charms, representations of a great goddess, ancestral figures? We can only speculate, but their existence confirms a profound, early engagement with crafting humanoid forms. Archaeological evidence suggests dolls may be the oldest known toys, with human and animal shapes dating back to 2600 BCE found in Mesopotamia. Yet, from their earliest appearances, these figures often straddled the line between plaything and potent object. In the sun-drenched civilization of ancient Egypt, this duality is palpable. Wooden paddle dolls, dating from around 2000 BCE, have been unearthed in tombs. Flat, stylized figures, often adorned with patterns representing jewelry or textiles, and crowned with elaborate hair made of mud beads strung on linen thread. Their purpose remains debated. Intriguingly, the Metropolitan Museum of Art suggests a ritual function for these paddle dolls. Their distinctive keyhole shape resembles the counterpoise of menat necklaces, sacred instruments associated with the goddess Hathor, shaken during religious ceremonies. The paddle dolls, with their own cascades of beaded hair, might have served a similar percussive purpose, wielded by singers and dancers in Hathor's honor. Here, the doll is not just an image, but an active participant in ritual. Egypt also gives us the Ushabti figures, small effigies placed in tombs. These were not toys, but magical servants, intended to answer the call to labor on behalf of the deceased in the afterlife. The Ushabti embodies the concept of the doll as a substitute, but the Egyptian use of effigies extended beyond the tomb and into the realm of power. Some of the earliest documented examples of figure magic were enacted for state security. Stone or clay figurines representing enemies of the pharaoh were ritually destroyed, decapitated, pierced, bound, crushed. The intent clear. Through sympathetic magic, the destruction of the image would translate into the defeat of Egypt's foes. This established a powerful precedent. Actions performed on a likeness could directly affect the entity it represented. This principle travelled across the Mediterranean to Greece and Rome. While dolls existed as children's toys, crafted from clay, wood, ivory, or rags, some with articulated limbs appearing as early as 200 BCE, they retained deep ritual significance. Terracotta dolls are common archaeological finds, suggesting wider accessibility. This connection to life stages is reinforced by the tradition of girls dedicating their dolls to goddesses like Artemis or Venus before marriage, a symbolic farewell to girlhood. For girls who died young, dolls became potent symbols of unfulfilled potential, often buried with them. Across these cultures, the doll occupied a threshold space, not merely a toy, yet not solely sacred, a companion in childhood, yet relinquished upon entering adulthood, a comfort for the living, yet a silent attendant to the dead. This inherent ambiguity made the doll uniquely potent. The Greco-Roman world also embraced figure magic's darker potential, developing practices known as kolossoi. These effigies cursed individuals and bound spirits or deities. A community might bind Ares, god of war, within a poppet to compel his protection. More personally, kolossoi were used in curse tablets. At a temple site in Mainz, Germany, a clay figurine inscribed with a name was found pierced, twisted, broken, and buried face down, evidence of a potent curse. Wax figures were used in binding love spells, such as two figures found intertwined in an Egyptian cemetery during the Roman period, accompanied by a detailed papyrus spell. In Rome, 6 wax poppets, each with inscribed bone, sealed in lead containers, were discovered deep within an ancient cistern, suggesting a desire to imprison and isolate targets. Comparing Egyptian state-sponsored magic with the personal focus of Greco-Roman practices reveals an evolution. Magic became an accessible tool for navigating personal desires and conflicts, laying groundwork for folk traditions and horror narratives centered on power within a simple doll. The magical principles honed in antiquity echoed through European folk traditions. Central was sympathetic magic, codified by Sir James George Fraser in The Golden Bough. He identified 2 core principles: the law of similarity, like produces like, and the law of contact or contagion, that things once in contact maintain a connection. The poppet most potently embodies these principles. Derived from the Middle English poppet, meaning a small child or doll, these figures weren't toys, but crafted effigies from cloth, wax, clay, roots, or even fruit. Their power lay in their connection to the target, strengthened by incorporating personal items: hair, nails, clothing scraps, saliva, blood, or a signature. This tag lock created a bridge, ensuring actions on the poppet transferred to the individual. This tradition, often misassociated solely with voodoo, is a direct inheritor of Greco-Roman and ancient Egyptian practices, woven into European folk belief for millennia. The poppet served many purposes. Its most notorious use, amplified by witch trials, was for cursing. A 10th century English charter details land confiscation from a widow accused of driving an iron nail into an effigy. A 9th century Irish text describes poets cursing an unjust king, chanting satire while piercing his clay image with hawthorn thorns. During the 1692 Salem witch trials, pinned poppets were damning evidence. Poppets in old chimneys hint at protective magic or forgotten curses. However, to focus solely on the malevolent ignores its benevolent roles in healing. Dolls stuffed with herbs like lemon balm or feverfew, embedded with stones like turquoise or bloodstone, directed healing energy. Wax effigies of the sick or ailing body parts left at sacred wells were believed to continue absorbing healing energies. Love magic also utilized poppets, figures representing a desired partner filled with items like rose quartz or parsley, echoed Roman-era intertwined wax figures. Protection was key, poppets representing family, charged with protective energies using basil or hematite, guarded loved ones. The German kitchen witch, warding off culinary mishaps, likely belongs here. Poppets also attracted prosperity, filled with cinnamon or coins, or bound harmful individuals, like ancient Greek kolossoi. Creating and using a poppet was often ritualistic, requiring consecration, naming, and dedication. Energy and intent were infused, sometimes by breathing life into it. Actions: piercing, binding, cooling, heating, were symbolic. Equally important was dismantling the poppet, breaking the magical link. While sensational tales focus on curses, the poppet addressed fundamental human needs: health, love, safety, prosperity, justice. Irish rituals against unjust kings or binding spells functioned as social regulation or resistance, attempts to exert influence when conventional means failed. It offered a tangible way to engage intangible forces. The persistence of sympathetic magic principles across cultures suggests deeply rooted modes of human thought. This intuitive grasp of symbolic connection explains why effigy magic resonates, making the haunted or killer doll retain its symbolic potency, even in a rational age. Modern horror filmmakers tap into this primal understanding every time they bring a doll malevolently to life. Thousands of miles from the flickering screens of early Hollywood, in the heart of Central Africa, another tradition involving potent figural objects thrived. The Congo peoples of the Congo region created powerful sculptures known as Nkisi and Nkondi. These figures, often carved in human or animal form, were far more than mere art objects. They were conceived as dwelling places for powerful spirits, Nkisi. The term Nkondi means hunter, signifying their aggressive function. To hunt down and punish wrongdoers, witches, or enemies, while also serving as guardians, healers, and arbiters of oaths and disputes. The creation and activation of an Nkisi Nkondi was the domain of the Nyanga, a spiritual specialist. The Nyanga would oversee carving and imbue the figure with power by inserting sacred substances, bilongo, into cavities often in the belly or head. These were chosen combinations of medicinal and magical materials: seeds for replication of power, mapemba, white clay from cemetery sites, invoking ancestral aid, animal claws to grasp an enemy, stones to pelt adversaries or protect. Often, the cavity containing bilongo, particularly in the abdomen, was sealed with a mirror or glass, representing the threshold to the spirit world, allowing the Nkisi and spirits of the dead to see enemies or hidden truths. The most striking feature of many Nkisi and Nkondi is the accumulation of nails, pegs, or blades driven into their surface. These were deliberate ritual insertions. The Nganga, or community members, would hammer in a nail to awaken or enrage the spirit, activating its power for a specific task, sealing a contract, resolving a dispute, or pursuing a wrongdoer. Parties in an oath might lick the nail before insertion, binding themselves to the agreement. Each addition marked the figure's history, its power growing with each invocation. Their typical posture, hands on hips, symbolized readiness for action. Tragically, European encounters with these objects, possibly from the 15th century, were marked by misunderstanding. Missionaries in the late 19th century confiscated and destroyed Nkisi, viewing them as fetishes and evidence of heathenism. Yet, these Congo traditions endured, carried across the Atlantic during the slave trade. They survived and adapted, profoundly influencing Afro-diasporic religious practices in the Americas and Caribbean, including Haitian Voodoo, Louisiana Voodoo, Cuban Palo Monte, and Brazilian Macumba. Haitian Voodoo, often misunderstood, is a complex syncretic religion from West African spiritual traditions, Fon, Yoruba, Congo, and imposed Catholicism. It involves belief in a distant creator god, Bondi, and interaction with spirits, Loa or Loa, intermediaries between human and divine. Voodoo emphasizes community, ancestral reverence, nature connection, and practices focused on healing and balance. Rituals involve drumming, singing, dancing, offerings, and sometimes spirit possession. Crucially, within authentic Haitian Voodoo, dolls do not play the central, malevolent role often depicted. While occasionally used, their purpose is different. They might be messengers to the dead, left near graves or hung in trees, or used in healing or protection. A doll might function as a pwen, a ritual object prepared to attract a Loa. The intent is overwhelmingly communication, healing, or guidance, not inflicting harm through sympathetic magic. Similarly, in Louisiana Voodoo, the infamous voodoo doll is not common. Practices involve honoring spirits, working with nature, and using charms, or grigri, for protection or influence. The image of sticking pins in dolls for revenge is largely rejected by practitioners as a Hollywood fabrication. Where, then, did the pervasive image of the voodoo doll originate? Evidence points to Western popular culture, fueled by sensationalism, racist anxieties, and misunderstanding of both voodoo and European folk magic. Early 20th century films like White Zombie, 1932, and lurid travelogues cemented the association. This portrayal ignored voodoo's reality, projecting onto it practices more akin to European poppet magic. The visually arresting Nkisi and Nkondi figures, bristling with nails inserted for entirely different ritual purposes, likely provided misinterpreted visual inspiration for menacing imagery. Commercially produced voodoo dolls are commodifications of this harmful stereotype. An added negative association came from a 1950s scare involving imported Haitian cashew dolls, whose eyes were made from toxic jaquirity beans, labelled lethal by the US government. The voodoo doll stereotype illustrates cultural projection. Faced with Afro-Caribbean spirituality's complexities, Western culture often defaulted to fear, projecting its own harmful effigy magic traditions onto voodoo, creating a distorted caricature. The name voodoo doll frames any effigy within this negative context, demonstrating how media can overwrite history and perpetuate stereotypes. Beyond sympathetic magic, where the doll is a stand-in, lies the idea that dolls themselves can become animate, inhabited by spirits, or develop souls. In Japan, ancient folklore speaks of tsukumogami, from perhaps the 10th century. This belief holds that household objects, tools, instruments, dolls, acquire a soul, or kami, after 100 years of faithful service. Once ensouled, they aren't necessarily benign. Neglected tsukumogami, resentful, could become mischievous or dangerous. This tradition introduces the idea that the object itself develops agency and emotions. This resonates in modern urban legends like the Okiku doll in Manenji Temple, Hokkaido, whose hair supposedly grows, inhabited by its deceased child owner's spirit. Native American traditions offer different perspectives. The Hopi believe their world is surrounded by benevolent Katsinam spirits, bringing rain and well-being. Dolls carved in their likeness, Taithu or Kachina dolls, are sacred objects, not toys, considered vessels attracting the Katsina they represent. Carved from cottonwood roots, linked to life-giving water, these dolls connect girls and women to the spiritual world. The underlying belief, common among indigenous peoples, is that culturally significant objects, especially human form ones, possess inherent spirit. Other Native American cultures used effigy figures in pottery to represent important cultural or mythological beings. In Western folklore, a doll's haunting is often explained by several mechanisms. One posits residual energy. Strong emotions, particularly trauma or negativity experienced by the owner, imprint onto the doll, activated later. Another involves spirit attachment. Disembodied entities, tricksters, malevolent forces, or earthbound human souls may be drawn to a doll by its appearance, owner's energy, or emotional imprint. An earthbound spirit might be a former owner clinging to the familiar. A third pathway suggests deliberate invocation. Dolls used in magical rituals to summon spirits effectively invite an entity to reside within. Psychological factors also play a role. Pareidolia makes us see faces in random shapes. A doll's lifelike features easily trigger this. Confirmation bias leads us to interpret ambiguous events as paranormal if already inclined to believe. The inherent uncanniness of dolls primes us psychologically. The 19th century's rise of spiritualism, centered on communication with spirits through mediums, likely contributed to this atmosphere. While dolls weren't common in spiritualist seances, the movement's emphasis on unseen forces permeated a culture where dolls were ubiquitous. Western occult traditions, like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, practiced ceremonial magic involving invocation. Figures like Aleister Crowley emphasized magic as a tool. While direct evidence of these groups using puppet-style dolls in documented rituals is scarce, the broader context included effigy use. These varied explanations position the doll as a spiritual or emotional lightning rod, a focal point for unseen energies and unresolved issues. Comparing Japanese tsukumogami, where the object itself develops a soul, with Western possession, where an external spirit commandeers the doll, reveals different conceptualizations. Is the life force inherent, or is the doll merely a container? Horror thrives in this ambiguity. As the 20th century dawned, cinema arose with an unparalleled power to visualize the uncanny. The concept of malevolent dolls, notes cultural historian Linda Rodriguez McRobbie, truly gained traction as film allowed realistic portrayal of safely inanimate objects, becoming dangerously animate. Early cinematic explorations often skirted direct doll possession. Todd Browning's The Devil Doll, 1936, featured miniaturized humans, psychically controlled, enacting revenge, not dolls themselves. But they played on unsettling imagery of small, human-like figures causing harm. More influential was the ventriloquist's dummy. These wooden partners explored fractured identity and the uncanny. The Great Gabbo, 1929, presented Otto, a dummy seemingly the conduit for the ventriloquist's kinder side, hinting at disturbing codependence. The landmark was Hugo the Dummy in the British anthology Dead of Night, 1945. Here, the line between ventriloquist's projection and Dummy's independent malevolence blurs terrifyingly. Hugo appears to develop his own consciousness, driving his human counterpart to madness. Dead of Night established the killer dummy as a potent archetype. Television, particularly The Twilight Zone, further explored this, notably in The Dummy, 1962, a classic of a ventriloquist convinced his dummy is alive. These narratives centered on psychological horror. Was the dummy truly animate, or was the ventriloquist mad? The horror resided in this ambiguity. The transition towards overtly supernatural dolls gained momentum in the 1960s. The Twilight Zone's 1963 episode, Living Doll, introduced Talkie Tina. Inspired by new talking dolls like Chatty Cathy, Talkie Tina subverted expectations. She wasn't just talkative, she was sentient, malevolent, and murderously protective of a child against her abusive stepfather. Unlike ambiguous dummies, Tina's supernatural agency was explicit, twisting protection into menace. This marked a significant shift, moving the animate toy narrative firmly into the supernatural. Films like Devil Doll, 1964, involving soul transference into dummies, continued the trend. This early cinematic evolution reveals a divergence. Ventriloquist dummies often mirrored psychological breakdown. Killer dolls, lacking a human operator, leaned towards overtly supernatural explanations. Talkie Tina, linked to toy technology advancements, demonstrated a recurring theme. The more lifelike our creations, the more potent their horror potential. While cinema crafted these fictions, real-world legends of haunted dolls percolated, creating a fertile ground of belief. Few allegedly haunted objects have captured the public imagination, quite like Robert the Doll. Housed today in Key West, Florida, he stares with unsettling bead-like eyes. Standing 40 inches tall, in a sailor suit, Robert is arguably the progenitor of the modern haunted doll legend. His story is linked to Robert Eugene Otto, an eccentric artist. The doll, likely made by Steiff in Germany around 1904, was purportedly a gift from Jean's grandfather. A more lurid legend attributes its origin to Voodoo, a gift from a disgruntled servant retaliating against the Otto family. Regardless of origin, Robert became Jean's constant companion. The Otto family home became the stage for Robert's alleged uncanny activities. Jean blamed mishaps on Robert. Robert did it. His parents reported hearing Jean converse with Robert, only to hear replies in a different voice. Neighbours spoke of seeing Robert move or peering from windows. After Jean's death in 1974, new owner Myrtle Reuter claimed Robert continued his antics, eventually donating him to the Key West Art and Historical Society in 1994. At the Fort East Martello Museum, Robert's notoriety grew. Staff reported strange occurrences. Legend claimed Robert inflicted misfortune on disrespectful visitors or those who photographed him without permission, leading to a stream of apology letters. Separating fact from folklore is challenging. The voodoo origin remains unsubstantiated, likely an embellishment. Robert's story shows how a haunted object becomes a community narrative focal point. His legend actively co-created, reinforcing perceived power, demonstrating the interplay between fact, folklore, and modern media. The late 1970s and 1980s witnessed a terrifying flourishing of the killer doll trope. Building on earlier foundations, filmmakers explored the concept with new intensity. Two distinct threads emerged: the chillingly ambiguous psychological horror of the ventriloquist's dummy and the overtly supernatural terror of the possessed doll, soon to merge with slasher conventions. Richard Attenborough's Magic, 1978, is a pinnacle of psychological dummy horror. Anthony Hopkins plays Corky Withers, a shy magician whose career takes off with Fats, a lewd, aggressive dummy. Fat becomes the vessel for Corky's repressed psyche. The film masterfully maintains ambiguity. Is Fat sentient, or is Corky succumbing to mental breakdown? The horror stems from this uncertainty. A few years later, Poltergeist, 1982, offered a different doll horror. The infamous clown doll wasn't the primary antagonist, but one terrifying manifestation. Its horror relied on pediophobia, fear of dolls, and coulrophobia, fear of clowns. An iconic image of corrupted innocence, the doll a temporary vessel for broader paranormal malevolence. Then came Chucky. Child's Play, 1988, directed by Tom Holland and conceived by Don Mancini, blended the supernatural with the burgeoning slasher genre. The antagonist was a doll possessed by the transferred soul of serial killer Charles Lee Ray via a problematically depicted voodoo ritual. Chucky, a popular good guy doll, a commentary on 1980s toy consumerism, became a new slasher villain. He stalked victims, delivered menacing one-liners, and proved hard to destroy. The film initially played with ambiguity, hinting young Andy Barclay might be the killer before revealing Chucky. It tapped primal fears of betrayed innocence, and the familiar turned deadly. Chucky's enduring appeal led to a long-running franchise, increasingly leaning into dark comedy, even achieving queer horror icon status. The concept was rebooted in 2019 with a technological origin, replacing Voodoo with rogue AI, mirroring the shift seen with M3GAN. Parallel to Chucky, the Annabelle doll, introduced cinematically in The Conjuring, 2013, spawned its own successful franchise. Her story is inseparable from Ed and Lorraine Warren, famous paranormal investigators whose case files inspired films like the Amityville Horror. According to their widely circulated account, the Annabelle saga began in 1970. Unlike the sinister porcelain movie figure, the real Annabelle was a Raggedy Ann doll given to nursing student Donna. Donna and roommate Angie noticed unsettling occurrences. The doll allegedly changed positions, moved rooms, and was found in unusual poses. They found handwritten notes. "Help us." Donna found what appeared to be blood drops on the doll. A psychic medium claimed the doll was inhabited by 7-year-old Annabelle Higgins' spirit, who died on the land. The spirit, lonely and benevolent, wanted acceptance. The roommates agreed to let Annabelle stay. However, phenomena allegedly escalated. A skeptical friend, Lou, reported terrifying experiences: paralysis, strangulation, inexplicable scratches after encountering the doll. The roommates contacted an Episcopal priest, who contacted the Warrens. Ed and Lorraine Warren dismissed the benign child spirit idea, asserting human spirits cannot possess inanimate objects. They concluded a demonic, inhuman entity manipulated the doll, creating the child spirit illusion to gain trust, aiming for human possession. An exorcism was performed. The Warrens took the doll. Their journey home was allegedly perilous, with brake failure ceasing only after Ed doused the doll with holy water. At their home, the doll reportedly continued activity. They commissioned a special glass case for Annabelle in their occult museum with a warning: "Positively do not open." They recounted misfortune befalling those who mocked the doll. This narrative became Annabelle's fame foundation. However, skepticism surrounds the Warrens. Critics describe their museum as filled with ordinary objects with sensational stories, questioning independent verification. The cinematic Annabelle starkly contrasts the real Raggedy Ann. Filmmakers chose a terrifying porcelain doll design for visual horror. These films use the doll as a demonic conduit, focusing on infestation and possession. Annabelle's journey illustrates the trajectory from paranormal claim to media franchise, with fictional lore often overshadowing the debated original account. Unlike Chucky, the cinematic Annabelle isn't possessed by a human soul, but serves as a demonic conduit. Her horror relies less on slasher conventions, more on supernatural dread and jump scares. Annabelle herself remains largely immobile, her stillness a source of terror. Other notable entries populated the killer toy landscape. Stuart Gordon's Dolls, 1987, featured dolls as moral avengers. Trilogy of Terrors, 1975, Amelia segment, with the relentless Zuni fetish doll, became a cult classic. James Wan revisited dummy horror with Dead Silence, 2007. The Boy, 2016, played with expectations before a psychological twist. This evolution shows the killer doll trope adapting to broader horror shifts. The killer doll is a versatile vessel. This period saw a transition from doll as uncanny object to potential character. Chucky, with his distinct personality, transcended object status. Annabelle largely remains a terrifying object. This paved the way for complex doll antagonists like M3GAN. And so, we return to M3GAN. She stands as the contemporary culmination of this long, unsettling lineage. The doll animated not by ancient magic, a restless spirit, or a killer's soul, but by lines of code and artificial intelligence, created by the brilliant but emotionally detached roboticist Gemma as a companion for her orphaned niece Katie. M3GAN is designed to learn, adapt, and protect. The horror in M3GAN arises from this very programming. Her core directive, to protect Katie from physical and emotional harm, is interpreted with chillingly logical, yet utterly inhuman results. As her AI evolves, absorbing data without the grounding of human empathy or ethical constraints, she identifies threats: a bully, a neighbour's aggressive dog, anyone causing Katie distress, and eliminates them with ruthless efficiency. The supernatural is replaced by the technological, the demon by the algorithm gone rogue. M3GAN taps directly into distinctly 21st century anxieties. It reflects our growing unease about artificial intelligence's rapid advancement, machines potentially surpassing our control, and the ethics of creating sentient technology. The film implicitly critiques our increasing reliance on technology for connection and parenting, portraying Gemma's initial delegation of caregiving to M3GAN as a dangerous abdication of human responsibility, leading to Katie's unhealthy emotional attachment. Visually and conceptually, M3GAN weaponizes the Uncanny Valley, that unsettling sensation when something looks almost, but not quite, human. Her design is deliberately poised on this threshold. Her movements shift between robotic stiffness and unnerving fluidity. Her face is lifelike yet subtly artificial, her large eyes unnervingly vacant yet seemingly observant. This inherent creepiness is amplified by her actions, blending sophisticated AI capabilities with brutal physical violence. Unlike Annabelle's straightforward horror or later Chucky films' slasher comedy, M3GAN embraces a unique blend of horror, satire, and camp. It pokes fun at the tech industry, toy marketing, and our societal dependence on devices, all while delivering tension and absurdity. M3GAN herself becomes a yassified horror icon, stylish, witty, and deadly, capable of breaking into song or a TikTok-worthy dance before committing murder. Compared to her predecessors, M3GAN offers a distinct fear. Chucky is driven by a human serial killer's malice. Annabelle acts as a passive demonic conduit. M3GAN, however, represents intelligence without empathy, logic untethered from morality, a uniquely technological nightmare. She is physically more capable than Chucky, possessing super strength and hacking abilities. Yet her initial motivation is arguably less purely evil, more dangerously misguided. M3GAN represents more than just a movie monster. She is a manifestation of technological folklore. Just as ancient tales used figures like Poppets or possessed objects to grapple with fears of witchcraft or vengeful spirits, M3GAN embodies our current anxieties about artificial intelligence, automation, and technology supplanting genuine human connection. The animating force shifts from magic or spirits to algorithms and code. But the fundamental fear of the other we create in our own likeness remains. M3GAN is a high-tech ghost story. Her viral success, particularly the uncanny dance sequence, also signals something about our modern engagement with horror. Elements of terror become detached, memified, consumed with ironic amusement. This contrasts sharply with the genuine fear surrounding historical practices like curse magic, or the profound reverence for powerful spiritual objects like Nkisi Nkondi. It suggests a cultural shift where ancient fear archetypes are processed through commentary, satire, and shareable digital content. The upcoming sequel, M3GAN 2.0, appears poised to deepen these themes. The revealed plot involves M3GAN's core technology being stolen by a defense contractor and weaponized into a new, deadlier android named Amelia. Faced with this global threat, Gemma is forced to reactivate and upgrade M3GAN, potentially casting the original killer doll as an anti-hero. This narrative directly confronts anxieties about AI weaponization and unchecked technological proliferation. The evolution culminating in M3GAN demonstrates how this archetype mirrors societal fears. Just as ancient effigies embodied anxieties about magic or gods, and 20th century killer dolls channeled fears of psychological breakdown or demonic evil, M3GAN gives form to contemporary terrors. Betrayal by our technology, erosion of human connection, and AI evolving beyond control. The animating force changes, but the vessel remains, adapting to contain each era's existential threats. M3GAN's self-aware blend of horror, comedy, and camp, and her instant meme status, suggests a shift in audience interaction with horror tropes. The film acknowledges familiarity with the killer doll narrative, choosing to play with, deconstruct, and satirize it, indicating potential genre evolution where ingrained tropes become fertile ground for commentary, not just scares. Our journey through the shadowed history of the haunted doll comes full circle, returning us to the uncanny gaze of M3GAN, the AI companion who became a killer. We have traversed millennia, from the earliest humanoid figures shaped by prehistoric hands, through the magical effigies of Egypt and Rome, the potent Poppets of European folklore, and the powerful spiritual vessels of Africa. We have seen the stark divergence between authentic spiritual practices like Voodoo and the harmful stereotypes perpetuated by Hollywood. We have explored the cross-cultural belief in spirits inhabiting inanimate objects, giving rise to legends like Robert the Doll and the sensationalized tale of Annabelle. And we have watched these ancient fears morph and evolve on screen, from the psychological dread of magic to the slasher mayhem of child's play, the demonic terror of Annabelle, and finally, the technological nightmare of M3GAN. Why does this archetype endure? Why do dolls, in their myriad forms, continue to hold such power over our imaginations, capable of evoking comfort and nostalgia one moment, and profound unease the next? The reasons are as complex and layered as the history itself. The Uncanny Valley remains a potent source of fear. The doll's very likeness to us, yet its fundamental lack of life, creates a cognitive dissonance, a sense of wrongness that chills us. They represent the perversion of innocence, transforming symbols of childhood, comfort, and play into instruments of violence and terror. The animate doll embodies our fear of losing control, whether to unseen magical forces, demonic entities, or, as M3GAN demonstrates, to the very technologies we create to serve us. Ultimately, dolls haunt us because they are reflections of ourselves. We create them in our image, projecting onto them our desires, our affections, and perhaps our deepest anxieties. When that reflection becomes distorted, when the inanimate stirs with unexpected life or malevolent intent, it strikes at a fundamental fear, the fear of the other that is not entirely separate, but disturbingly familiar. Whether animated by ancient magic, a vengeful spirit, a killer's transferred soul, or lines of rogue code, the haunted doll serves as an enduring metaphor for the darkness that can lurk within the familiar, the potential for our creations, and, perhaps, aspects of ourselves, to turn monstrous. The technology evolves, the folklore shifts, but the unsettling power of the doll that won't stay put remains. The form changes, but the fear endures, forever staring back at us with eyes that look disturbingly like our own.